Hello, class. Today we want to talk about reality, knowledge, and the challenge of postmodernism. Reality, knowledge, and the challenge of postmodernism. And behind all of this, the first thing we need to talk about is what is called the epistemological challenge. That is, how do we know what we know? How do I know that this podium is black? Black is a name we've given to a color. How do I know that is black? How do we know what we know? This question was first raised by the philosophers of the Enlightenment period, and ever since it has been the ongoing question of the day. How do we know what we know? Several possible answers have been given. Rationalism was an early answer of the Enlightenment, that we could reason our way to knowing how we know what we know. Empiricism was another answer. We know based on our experience, and only those things which we can test by experience are things that we can know. Positivism built on that with an empirical model that basically said that the only things we can know are the things we can test scientifically. And in the early 20th century, positivism was a very powerful philosophical force propelling forward the study of the natural sciences. Subjectivism bases what we know on our internal perceptions of things. And skepticism questions whether we can really know anything at all. Skepticism was developed by David Hume in Scotland. Empiricism, rationalism were more akin to developments in Germany and with Immanuel Kant and some of those German philosophers. But these have been the possible answers that have been set forth, and skepticism seems to be very prevalent today within the postmodern world. So we want to talk about then approaches to understanding reality as we talk about the epistemological challenge and knowledge and reality and postmodernism. We want to talk about approaches to understanding reality. Reality is the world around us as it exists. It is the ontological problem. In Platonism, developed by Plato in ancient Greece, it is a question of form and matter. Forms are what exist in Plato's thinking in the eternal mind, and these forms are immutable. And matter is the material world which exists as passing shadows of the true forms that exist in the eternal mind. Let me see if I can illustrate that for you. This is a podium, but in the Platonic system, in God's mind, in the eternal mind, there is a perfect podium that never changes. And that is the true podium. It is a form, and it is the true podium, of which this is but a shadow of a podium that will one day be destroyed. And so everything in the material world is but a passing shadow of the reality that exists in the divine mind. This form of philosophy influenced early Christian thought fairly extensively. Empiricism. This faces the epistemological problem. How do we know what we know? In empiricism, only the phenomenological world can be known, and that only through sensory experience. We know what we know through the five senses. We experience the sweetness of sugar. We experience the color that we know through sight. We experience the smells of the world, of the flower, or whatever. And these are the things we can know through empirical experience. And this brought about a debate about the nature of cause and effect between Immanuel Kant and David Hume. And Immanuel Kant argued that the noumenal world is known subjectively in the mind of the knower only. And so he divided knowledge. We call this the bifurcation of knowledge. He divided knowledge into the phenomenological, which we know by experience, and the noumenal, which we know only in the mind, And this became a hallmark of the Enlightenment, and the spiritual realm got pushed into the noumenal and out of the phenomenological, and created an atmosphere of skepticism about the spiritual world. In postmodernism, all reality is known subjectively. There is no big T truth or absolute. All the talk of reality is culturally and linguistically conditioned. If you want to study this in detail, look at Wittgenstein's book from the early 20th century called Language Games. Truth and reality and morality are either personal, what's true for you as an individual, or they are communal, what's true for your group, your community, your, to use the latest term in vogue, your tribe. And so this creates the postmodern challenge to Christian theology. How can the church make universal, absolute, and exclusive claims about God, sin, and salvation from within a postmodern context? There have been attempts to wed postmodernism and Christianity, but they are doomed to failure. Evangelicalism and missions will be undercut at the root because there is no basis for arguing that Christian truth claims are inherently superior to the claims of Buddhism, Islam, Judaism, or atheism in a postmodern worldview. Claims are true so long as they serve a functional purpose for the individual or the religious group that holds them. The only intolerable position in the postmodern world is the one that claims that others are wrong. And so, within postmodernism, there is no framework for defending the ultimate and absolute truth claims of the gospel.